Hi, everyone. Welcome to the GoldFish Report. I'm your host, Louisa. Make sure my headphones are plugged in. Sorry, it's Monday, folks. It's Monday, April 22nd, 2019, the day after Easter. Hope everybody who observed, Passover and Easter had a nice holiday weekend. And this is our GoldFish Report number 354, week 118 POTUS report with our good friend, Dr. Jim Fetzer. How are you, Jim?
Terrific, Louisa. Trump put out a brilliant tweet considering that Mueller has exonerated him and his team from any collusion with Russia. If the Democrats want to pursue it, Trump tweeted, "How can you impeach a Republican president for actions done by Democrats?" That's devastating, Louisa. This was all in the Obama administration. If there was Russian interference in the election, Obama is a responsible president who ought to have been impeached, not Trump.
Well, you're right. And I think that, Judicial Watch tweeted this morning that Obama could still be impeached. Interesting. So we'll see what happens. But you're right. And I just posted that on the GoldFish Report Facebook news page, that tweet. The president tweeted that this morning. And he also posted it on Facebook as well. So look, folks, there's so much going on, but I need to warn you all what's going on. And I need all of our viewers now to share these videos far and wide. We are over the target, folks. This is really, we're at war. I hope everybody really realizes that in terms of censorship. This is another GoldFish report that's been removed from. Now, look, we upload these unlisted, so you can't even find it if you're trying to search in a search engine. You have to go to our website to access it. And they deleted this. This was 2 weeks ago, our POTUS report with Jim and I, and they deleted this saying that it violates their harassment, threats, and cyberbullying policy. And they removed it. And that wasn't all. They said that they disabled my live streaming in addition to removing the video. They banned me from uploading any more videos to YouTube, and they disabled my custom thumbnails so I can't use my logo. They want to remove GoldFish Report off of the internet. Get it, folks? Do you get it? Do you really see what's happening here? I mean, look, we have been so censored, Jim. We've been under such heavy attack that, I don't know that any channel has suffered more than GoldFish Report. And we are still, doing everything we can to hold on. We've lost funding because our viewers can't even access us anymore. This is unthinkable. It's unreal censorship. And what for, folks? What for? What are they afraid of? What are they afraid of? Well, I'm going to tell you what they're afraid of. Let's not forget about, first of all, there's the 19th was the last time Q posted any videos. So there's, any, what do you call it? Jim, can you see this?
Yes.
It says it's paused, but I want to make sure you can see this chart. Can you see the 16-year plan to destroy America?
Yes, indeed.
Okay. Folks, this isn't new. You've seen this before. They had, the plan was to destroy the United States. Using 8 years of Barack Obama, check, they did that. And of course, you can see how they were doing it through all these different install rogue operators in government. Check, they did that. Leak classified military secrets. They did that. Hillary Clinton did that through her server, Dianne Feinstein, through the Chinese. The Chinese accessed this, found out who our 21 spies, operatives were in China, or operatives, and killed them. Okay, cut military funding. Obama destroyed the military to such an extreme degree that they were left completely impotent. I mean, honest to God, it was that bad, the funding, okay? Weak command of generals, kill NASA, U.S. space supremacy. Right, he cleaned out. He fired, 47 or 30 generals or something when he took office? He just cleaned house, right? Removed good guys from government, blah, blah, blah. You can read all this. Checkmate, they did that. Stage Supreme Court, right? Loretta Lynch meeting on the tarmac, right? Here we have, and I'm not glossing over these other things as if they're insignificant, because they are not. Look, fund terrorism through MS-13 and ISIS. It's nothing inconsequential here. It's huge. It's all huge. And then the next 8 years was going to be the slow kill. Okay, going to start another World War III. real and orchestrated. You know, they were all for making money, and they were all sacrifices, human sacrifices for the globalists that are running the world, who are Satanists. Okay, so I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be religious here, but you know, Satan, you know, was said in the Bible, Satan ruled the planet. He was cast down here, and he had angels with him, and they were roaming around. So Jesus warned us, you know, there's more in the unseen than in the seen world. So what does that mean? That means esoteric. They were doing all of this through esoterics and these secret societies and all of this. What else do we have? Population control. This is what their agenda was. But what happened? She lost. And Trump got in office, and it killed their plan because they had it all set up so perfect. Folks, look at this. They had the Supreme Court stage. They had the government. They had the military weakened. They were funding terrorism. They were removing good guys from the government. They were installing rogue. We were infiltrated, folks. This was a coup d'etat, and I hope everybody understands and realizes that this Mueller report was part of this coup d'etat trying to oust President Trump, because President Trump, whether you like his personality or not, he's all we have to save this republic. And I really hope people understand this, because this is what we were up against. How were they going to do it? What was it here? Where's the election? They were going to take care of the elections here. And so here's one of the leaked WikiLeaks emails. Can you see this, Jim? Can you see this email?
No, it hasn't.
I have to stop sharing and then re-screen share again.
Right.
Okay, here's the email. This is to Donna Brazil and to John Podesta from looks like someone who they're working with. I don't know who this person is. Probably working with the DNC.
Wow.
The dogs are loose. I'll be meeting with Soros later this week for some pre-programming of the machines.
Wow.
Okay.
This is a doozy, Louisa.
Yeah, these machines will be humming in November. Okay, they were rigging the election. Of course they were. This is a smoking gun, folks. This is a smoking gun. And what else were they going to do? Let's see. Why do they hate President Trump? Why are they trying to destroy him? Why are they going after him? Because he's foiling their plans to destroy our republic. And President Trump is here to restore our republic. Okay, so take a look.
He's not under their control, Louisa. I mean, that's why they were setting up from the beginning. They knew he was an independent guy. He was wealthy, a manager, knew public relations, brilliant success on television. They knew he was a threat. Yeah. Hillary mistakenly thought he'd be the easiest candidate to beat, and therefore it appears encouraged actually that he become the nominee, but it turned out to be quite the opposite.
Right. Here's another list, General Electric lobbyist meeting notes, okay? All from the same, see the source says WikiLeaks.
Louisa, if that's supposed to be another email, we're not seeing it.
You're not seeing it. Okay, so okay, it's an issue with screen share, so I'm just going to re-screen share.
There you go.
So this was the source is the WikiLeaks Clinton files, which was released back in 2016. Okay, this says that General Electric lobbyists met with GE and GPAC, give background on the GE. Produced 1/3 of world's energy, third biggest healthcare company, and look, gave $400,000 to House Democrats last cycle, but they are still facing headwinds this cycle. I mean, how much, folks? These people, look, the Dems want to repeal medical device tax to be fully funded. They don't care about it. They're not doing anything for me and you. This is all about controlling, you know, the people at the top levels who are in control, making their own deals. They could care less. Give them cake. That's their attitude. And of course, we have screen shared this before. Jim, can you see this one?
No, I'm still on the General Electric lobbyist meeting.
Okay. So here we have, and folks, this is all on the internet. You can find these documents on the internet. This was from the MI6 file. This was also from the same cache of documents. Here talking about that this was directed by the President of the United States at the direction of the President. So here, on the 20th of August, 2016, GCHQ CSO filed for permission to execute Project Folsom at the or Crossfire Hurricane. It's the same thing at the request of the U.S. president. Now, at that time, that was Barack Obama. Boom, smoking gun, folks. Okay, U.S. National down here number 4. U.S. National Security Advisor Rice has requested that we continue our surveillance. Folks, this is why they're trying to take. So this is it. This is what the Mueller report was all about. Okay, and Hillary Clinton had everything, and the Democrats had everything planned. They had these. We had these documents on before. Sadly, our blogs were deleted because we were sharing the truth, doing exactly what WikiLeaks did in lawfully obtaining material, and then being censored, banned, or in this case, having false charges brought against you to silence you. So this is how it operates, folks. And if you don't stand up for our republic, we're going to lose it. And we are in the process of doing that. We are at war right now, trying to save our republic. Because what happens here in the United States is going to trickle across the whole world. If we can't get it right here, folks, then this whole plan on planet Earth is really lost. We need to get this right. Here we had the Clinton Foundation working on doing their research, right? Their opposition research. And then we had, plans from all kinds of things here. This is hard to see, these documents, but this was talking about, creating unnatural disasters using HARP, Sharia escalation to destabilize people. And this was their plan, and it was working. It's total social engineering. We are the sheep, folks. We are the sheep. Wake up and realize it. Please wake up and realize it, and pay attention to what's happening, and put your support behind President Trump, because he is trying to save us. Look at this. This was a plan here. Went by the code name Fire Sign, which is to create an awe effect. It was like this was a hologram to create a fake alien invasion. You can't make this up. This is right here in black and white. You know what I'm saying? So it's not a surprise. I'm just saying, it's not a surprise that they went after Donald Trump. And can you imagine? Can you imagine? And Mark Levin said this, and the president retweeted him this morning, his little part on air about this, about the fact that our republic is at stake here. And if you don't realize that, you better realize it now, because as he said, Mark Levin said, the separation of powers is broken down. The rule of law was broken down. The media was completely broken down. It's no longer freedom of the press, but freedom to fake the press, freedom to fake the news. And as Mark Levin said, we resulted in a mob mentality here, Jem, didn't we? There was a coup d'etat from half the population, including the House of Representatives, most of the House of Representatives, I would say, were involved in this coup to out Donald Trump, to overtake. Look, we're a free society. This was our Achilles heel, wasn't it? Was it not, Jim? Was it not always our Achilles heel to have a free and open society? And to have a free and open society, we could be infiltrated. And we have been. It's happening. The enemy
Well,
within.
but the infiltrators are in the Democratic Party, Louisa. It's shocking. It's the way in which the Clinton cabal, really Hillary primarily, with aided and abetted by Bill, John Podesta, and a host of others, put themselves ahead of the interest of the nation. They have always been in it for themselves. That it has corrupted the system because they acquired so much influence and power, much of it corruptly, even to the point of selling off 20% of U.S. uranium reserves to Russia for a $145 million bribe. If that doesn't come across to the American people as a form of treason, where Barack Obama had to approve the sale as the president of the United States, if that doesn't qualify as a high crime or misdemeanor, I can't imagine what would.
Right. Well, look, I'm just saying that this whole they wanted to change America. They wanted to destroy America. Okay, these were our enemies. Now the thing about the Democratic Party is they were infiltrated. They were hijacked itself, because there was a lot of rhinos, like Senator McCain, excuse me, and many others who really weren't This is the issue. They're Satanists. Okay, these are the people who are putting their allegiance to Moloch and the sacrificing. They're Satanists. You just have to accept that's the fact. Okay, and they don't hide it. When Chelsea Clinton wears an upside down cross, that means that she's a practicing Satanist. Okay, so they took over the Democratic Party, and it wasn't always that way, but they took it over. It's not the Democrats when I grew up. You know, it's not the JFK Democrat Party. It isn't. So they also infiltrated some of the Republicans as well, because you have to have it in both places. So they were destroying America little by little, and everybody sat down because we became completely demoralized. And we have that KGB, we have screen shared that before, Jim, that KGB defector who talked about the demoralization of America and how easy it was to take it over. And if we don't stand up for our society and our way of life, we will lose it, and we were losing it. And we need to stand. Now is the time to do it, because we are losing everything that represents America, everything that our, family and forefathers fought for, the blood, the sacrifices we made to defend our country. Has our country was used, our military was used as a proxy army to do all this bloodshedding and do all this, create all this, satanic sacrificial energy. Okay, so, this is the bankers' wars. All these wars are bankers' wars. These Khazarians, the fake Jews, the ones Jim talks about all the time that are not the Semite Jews, but the Khazarian fake Jews that follow the Talmud, right, Jim? So
Yeah.
these are the people at the top who are infiltrating. And why would Barack Obama be wearing a wedding ring with Arabic, inscription on it? Okay, so he was not really. I think what we're going to see, folks, very soon, we're going to start seeing, little by little, it's going to start falling down. We're going to start seeing all of this exposed. I know that if you watch Hannity, you watch Judge Janine, lots of people out there who are trying to really kind of shake people up. This is kind of what I'm trying to do, what Jim's trying to do, is shake you up and realize, kind of get out of your stupor already and see what's going on in the world around you. And of course, we're so busy just trying to maintain our lives that we really hardly have any time to notice. People distrust the government. And, President Trump is fighting a huge adversary, but he's got a lot of help. And I think we're going to win this, but we're not going to win it unless we're all playing a part of it. We all have to wake up, and we all have to be a part of this. So, I don't know what's going to happen with GoldFish Report, because we are so extremely censored. We can only rely on you, to the viewer, to spread this far and wide, upload it. You want it, I'll send you the link. I'll send it to you, whatever you need. But this is the issue, and we are up against a very demonic force. This is really Star Wars. I mean, it's like, good versus evil here. This is literally what Q says all the time. Good versus evil. These people are sick. You really have to understand that. If you don't want to see it, and you don't want to face it because it's too uncomfortable, it's too bad, because you're going to find out about it anyway. So you might as well be part of the solution and not part of the problem. So that's my monologue for this morning, Jim. And I'm gonna calm down now, and I'm gonna hand it over to you.
Well, those were all great points, Louisa.
Thank you.
I thought, a lot of what you presented there was really totally spot on. So here's the tweet. How do you impeach a Republican president for a crime that was committed by the Democrats? Make America great again. Brilliant tweet. It's been massively retweeted, all kinds of likes. This is getting all over the world, Louisa, and deservedly so. We know, in fact, the perps who were responsible for all of this. The head perp was none other than Barack Obama. If you want to trace it out, you can go on to find the Russia hoax comes apart at the seams, where I go through it very patiently, 153news.net. You can trace a whole history of this event. Trump is not just blowing smoke. It's not mirrors. He's speaking the truth. It was the Democrats who were responsible. And Devin Nunes has outlined key issues post the Mueller report, confirming that Mueller blocked key documents, namely the targeting, framing of Michael Flynn and the positioning of a false narrative around innocuous Russia contacts. the use of Joseph Mifsud as an asset by the CIA, FBI running a counterintelligence operation against the Trump campaign. The Trump Tower meeting is organized by Fusion GPS. And by the way, it's interesting that, as a good friend of mine, Rolf Lundgren, explained to me yesterday, because what they were doing was a counterintelligence campaign that was not investigating a crime, Trump technically cannot be responsible for any obstruction of justice. The counterintelligence program technically is actually run for the President of the United States. Additionally, for the first time, Nunes confirmed it was Robert Mueller who blocked delivery of documents to the House Investigative Committee, which he then chaired. This might be old news. It confirms our earlier research. It was Mueller and Rosenstein who were protecting Department of Justice interests by using the Russia probe as a shield. And here you see some of the most important players here, where your remarks about Rod Rosenstein are, to me, extremely interesting, Louisa, and he may indeed be stand deserving of exoneration. But Brennan, Comey, Clapper, Wray, not so. It turns out, too, and this is rather fascinating, that as the LaRouche organization has revealed, Trump fired Comey to carry out his campaign pledge to work with Russia. There's a major story buried in the scurrilous Mueller report that needs to be made known internationally. As LaRouche Pack's Barbara Boyd writes in her report on the Mueller, in the original letter which Trump dictated to Stephen Miller firing Comey, Donald Trump said Comey's refusal to state publicly that Trump was not a target was specifically inhibiting what the president wanted to do with Russia with respect to trade and with respect to collaboration on eliminating ISIS. With the intervention of the same staff, the media are portraying as unsung heroes. Rod Rosenstein's screed referencing Comey's misconduct in the Clinton investigation was substituted as the rationale for his firing. This, of course, created the entirely false narrative. The president covered up his real reason for firing Comey. It may be that he actually did conceal the real reason, but the CIA was manipulating the situation behind the scene in a desperate effort to ensure no improvement in relations with Russia. Here's a nice example here. CIA chief used duck photos to trick Trump into anti-Russia move. President Trump makes plenty of hostile moves toward Russia of his own accord. This is compounded, however, when members of his cabinet, like CIA Director Gina Haspel, starts conniving to mislead him into taking even more hostile moves. When the alleged Novichok poisoning happened in Salisbury, and that was all contrived, we know, Trump was not inclined to go along with recommendations to take a strong move against Russia. Haspel was somehow tasked to convince him to accept the move. She showed him fake photographs of dead ducks, claiming they were poisoned in the sloppy Russian action. The fact is, actually, that the family had pets, and the pets were unharmed, which was contradictory evidence. So this is a case of illustrating that Gina Haspel is as dirty as her predecessor, John Brennan. Here's a wonderful political cartoon where the Democrats continue, and I am stunned by this. On MSNBC, on CNN, on the major networks, they're still insisting, attacking the Attorney General as having no proof of spying, as though they're unaware that the FISA warrant from the beginning was a warrant to spy on Trump. This is insulting beyond belief, Louisa. I am frankly shocked that the mainstream is still pushing their phony narrative.
You know, I don't know when they're going to have a come to Jesus moment, realize that it's futile for them to keep trying to push this and keep trying to spin it. I mean, notice how the only potential weakness there was in the report is what they're exploiting at the moment, but it's going to go nowhere. I mean, they are out though, Jim. They're out of, they don't know what to do. They're out of, you saw in that, 16-year plan, they didn't plan for this. So they're scrambling, scurrying right now as much as they can like rats.
Well,
this to come up with a plan to
this attack, the censorship, the attack on the internet, and the attempt to take away our guns by staging these false attacks are all interrelated with the desire to take down the United States as a sovereign nation and make it subservient to the New World Order. So
right.
You're absolutely on the right track.
right.
These are definitely interrelated, where the Zionist infestation of the media has compounded the situation immeasurably, because the media is nothing but a propaganda organ of the deep state, which is in alliance with the New World Order. It's a very, very troubling, Louisa.
I just keep my vision. I hold my vision, Jim, of our new republic with the bad guys arrested. And just remember, folks, we don't really know who's good and bad right now completely. That's why Jim made that remark about Rod Rosenstein, because I did see a picture of Rod Rosenstein. If you want to see it, go to the goldfishreport.blogspot.com, go to our blog and check out the pictures from over the weekend where Rod Rosenstein was at the White House Easter egg roll. And, well, if he's about to lose his job, why would he be there? Something is not quite right there. And then there was a tweet from somebody else saying that, it was pretty clear that he was one of the good guys um, who's trying to, I guess, work on, I guess he was there to,
Set things right.
yeah,
Set things
well,
right.
no, but he had to look like he was going along with it. So he had
Yeah,
to,
no, I get it. I get it.
he had to catch that. So as much as the
It was like
Democrats,
Smedley Butler when there was an
yeah,
attempt to overthrow Roosevelt. He was recruited to lead an overthrow of the government, and he went along until he could identify the key players, and he exposed it on testimony to Congress, for which he ought to be lauded by the entire world.
I agree. But just like they had planted a spy within the Trump campaign to try to do something to implant, some bad information that could be used against Trump at some point. The good guys had their plants too. So it's not like they know the games and the plays or the tricks of the opposite, of the dark. So it's they're using it as well. They're being methodical, and you notice how Donald Trump always lets the enemy think they're in control. This is such a masterful Sun Tzu. So there's a lot of actors, folks. It's going to be very interesting to see when it all comes out in the wash who was really an actor and who was, to help us restore our republic. It'll be very interesting, Jim.
I agree, Louisa. There we have why the Mueller report could turn into a never-ending story on the Hill, from the Hill. Well, this actually from Fox News, but look at this, the conclusion from the Mueller report that was, in my opinion, scurrilous. Because we determined not to make a traditional prosecutorial judgment, we did not draw ultimate conclusions about the president's conduct. Well, frankly, the conclusions are supposed to be drawn by the Department of Justice as to whether or not a prosecution is warranted, not by those conducting the investigation. So that's misleading from the start. The evidence we obtained about the president's actions and intent present difficult issues that would need to be resolved if we were making a traditional prosecutorial judgment. At the same time, if we had confidence after a thorough investigation of the facts that the president clearly did not commit obstruction of justice, we would so state. Based on the facts and the applicable legal standards, we are unable to reach that judgment accordingly. While this report does not conclude the president committed a crime, it also does not exonerate him, which is just an indication of the profound corruption of Robert Mueller, frankly. Because as I've explained, given this was a counterintelligence investigation, given it was being conducted by the Obama administration, it's impossible that Trump could have committed obstruction of justice here. It's embarrassingly bad we have this taking place. Meanwhile, we have Attorney General Bill Barr releasing the Mueller report in the middle of the first major congressional research of the year. Both the House and Senate usually break for more than 2 weeks. Barr long ago announced he'd make it public in mid-April. That frustrates congressional Democrats. Pelosi in Europe, just concluding a speech to the Irish Parliament in Dublin. Lindsey Graham was in Rwanda. Jerry Nadler was in New York City. The logistics make the release much more difficult, protested Richard Blumenthal, who's as dirty as they come, from Connecticut. The administration seems to be purposely creating obstacles and hurdles to prevent full disclosure, but the whole thing's a PR campaign. The Attorney General is not letting facts speak for themselves, but baking in a narrative that benefits the White House and doing it before the holiday weekend, so it'll be hard for people to react, said Nadler, who held a press conference in the city late Wednesday to preempt Barr. and suggested the Attorney General cancel his morning press conference. Releasing the report during the recess may mute some congressional response, but satellite dishes, TV studios are available this time of year. Twitter remains operational. Most of the country doesn't hang on every word out of Washington. And no, whether Congress is in or out of session, in fact, they don't accomplish any more when they're in session than when they're out. Many Americans wouldn't interrupt their workday to cut through the Mueller report, let it go and actually read it. That's why the role of the media is so absolutely crucial here. Senator Roy Blunt drew the lot to serve as the GOP's designated in person at the Capitol spokesman on the Mueller report once he rapped the gavel on Thursday. Journalists waited for Blunt in the basement of the Russell building to get his views. The couple sought out Don Bayer of Virginia, who presided over the House's pro forma session later Thursday. Congressional Democrats now see a yawning chasm between the contents of the Mueller report and the interpretation presented by Barr and want to explore that in the daylight. There's peril for Democrats, however, if they continue to discuss impeachment, which is why they must drive down both sides of the street. Impeachment talk harms moderate Democrats from battleground districts, and lots of them would prefer to focus on policy issues like health care, prescription drugs, infrastructure, and even gun policy before discussing impeachment. Louisa, let me mention, polls are showing that the Mueller report is not having an effect on the Democrat base. It's not having an effect on the Republican base, but it is making independents more positive toward Donald Trump. So it's affecting the key swing group. If you count each one, about a third of the electorate. The independents are being affected in a favorable way toward Trump by this report. If liberals push impeachment, moderate Democrats have a chance to contrast themselves not with Republicans, but with members of their own party. They can say, no, I'm not for impeachment. Let's work on bread and butter issues. But there's a risk for Democrats if they overplay their hand. That's why Republicans are more than happy to lump all Democrats together. The key is how Democrats finesse this to satisfy both wings of their caucus. And here's a very elaborate layout of the players who are involved in what is very appropriately known as SpyGate. There's no question but what Trump has been in the right about this from the beginning. There was no collusion. It was all contrived, and it was all done by Democrats or allies aligned with Democrats. And if there had been any Russian collusion, then Barack Obama would be the party held responsible, not Donald Trump.
Well, Jim, also, all people have to do is look back over the past 2 years and see what the Democrats have done for them. Nothing. All they've been trying to do was take out the president, attack the president. They have put forth nothing except socialism. And, you know, we're not going to change who we are if we don't let it happen. That's the whole key, is to not allow it to happen. But that's should be a wake-up call. And I have to tell you, having, you know, interaction with family over the holidays, it's very interesting. Oh my God, I never thought it would happen, but I have a relative who came to the conclusion themselves. Let me tell you, not red-pilled at all. Didn't want to hear anything. Wanted to live in that little safe little world that they kind of knew was predictable. And so it looks like the Democrats are really going crazy, he said. And said, you know, and the media is just, you know, involved in it and something. And I'm like, whoa, that's a big leap. I don't know about you, Jim. Have you had any hope or any signs of any of the people, some of the people that maybe you see on a regular basis who you don't work with, but like people who just don't really know what's going on around the world, you know, with all this deception and false flags and all these other things. Do you see any improvement on, or any progress, I should say?
Well, Louisa, I think the polling is the telling issue.
Yes, that is.
Those I deal with generally are clearer thinkers. You know, I mean, I don't have people who didn't understand what was going on. Therefore, they're not affected by the truth coming out, other than to be grateful that the public is getting a better impression of the reality of the situation. So I think those poll results are, in fact, enormously significant.
It is. It's great.
As it goes deeper and more of this is spelled out, Louisa, I think the public outrage is going to grow.
Oh, yeah.
Meanwhile, we have a fascinating development in Ukraine. Remember, Victoria Nuland is an undersecretary of state, invested $5 billion to create unrest in Ukraine. George Soros contributed another $50 million to get Poroshenko, who is a stooge of the West, in and to drive out the democratically elected president of Ukraine. Well, now that their Porky candidate is out, and a guy who's actually a comic, a comedian, is in, where it could be said the West backed the wrong man in Ukraine, and now it's payback time. This is from Russia Today, a report. Here's a right here from the Associated Press. Comic Zelensky wins the Ukraine presidential vote in a landslide. With nearly all the votes counted in Ukraine, TV star Volodymyr Zelensky is projected to win the country's presidential runoff in a landslide. The Central Election Commission said he'd won 73% of the vote, while the incumbent Poroshenko got just 24%, with more than 96% of the votes counted. Unlike most of elections in Ukraine's post-Soviet history, he appears to have won both in Ukraine's west and Ukraine's east, areas that have been traditionally polarized. This is a good sign. One of the campaign slogans of the popular TV comedian, who had no previous political experience, was to unify Ukraine, which had been torn by bitter debates over its identity, as well as a separatist conflict in the east, fueled by neighboring Russia. Well, look, Ukraine has a long history with Russia. It was Zbigniew Brzezinski who, in his book, The Grand Chessboard, suggested if you could pry off Ukraine from Russia, because Ukraine was a breadbasket of Russia, it could greatly weaken the bear. That's what Victoria Nuland and the other neocons undertook to do. But it now appears as though that is backfiring, that they aren't going to be able to persist with that policy, because even with a landslide to give him a powerful mandate, he has daunting challenges ahead. The simmering deadly conflict in eastern Ukraine, the conundrum over Russia's 2014 annexation of Crimea, which, by the way, was done in accordance with international law, but has been propagandized by the mainstream media, are likely to dominate the agenda of a man who until now only played the president in a TV sitcom. He's a Russian speaker from central Ukraine, promised to step up efforts to reintegrate the East into the fold, but offered no details. I think it's better that he educates the West so that its attitudes become more like those prevailing in the East, which are very pro-Russian, which reflects the long history of Ukraine in relation to Russia. A political novice, 41-year-old Zelensky, will also have to face off against Russian President Putin, who's ruled his country for nearly 2 decades. If he wants to mend relations with Ukraine's neighbor, well, no doubt you're going to find that Putin wants to mend relations. So I think that's the easiest part of the equation, Louisa.
Yeah, and President Trump did call him and congratulate him on that win. Those, by the way, folks, the press releases over the past couple of days are published on the GoldFish Report blog. I didn't go over them today because we just had to deal with the insanity that's going on. But beware that they're trying to. Now, the new narrative is to label Trump supporters, particularly anyone who follows Q, as a cult. This is inversion, which is what Satanism does. They invert the truth. So be careful. Don't be fooled and tricked by them. I hate to go back to the Bible and use this as a reference because I'm not religious. I'm very spiritual. I'm not religious. But it does tell you in there that Satan will tempt you. They will fool you. They will deceive you. Don't be deceived, folks. Don't be deceived. It's right before your face. And the greatest temptation, the greatest deception is by them, deceiving you that they even exist. Because you don't want to see that. You don't want to see it, but it's there. So be careful, because this is the cult language now is going to be the new agenda that they push to try to discredit Trump. So
this is just such a fascinating development right here in the USA, where Ilhan Omar is being described as disrespectful to the U.S. and disrespectful to Israel by Donald Trump. This is frankly the most troubling aspect of Trump, who I support, where I agree he's our only hope, but his indebtedness to Israel is appalling to me. In an interview Monday in Minnesota, Trump said Omar has got a way about her that's very, very bad for her country. I could not disagree more. She's been outspoken. She's made an issue of our relationship with Israel and of the domination of our Congress by AIPAC. Those are among the most important issues that ought to be subject to public discussion. Trump continues. She's very disrespectful to this country. She's been very disrespectful, frankly, to Israel. She is somebody who doesn't really understand life, real life, what it's all about. I think that's all completely wrong, completely wrong. Here's an interesting piece, by the way, from the Jimmy Dore show.
I want to talk about Ilhan Omar and this controversy. You've heard about this,
oh
right?
My God. Oh, you can't hear anything.
So right now, people have been
very bad.
People have been showing
I'll try to turn it up.
So of course, what happened is we got a Muslim American who
can you hear
a
it?
job in Congress.
I don't know how it's going to come out, but I turned it up as much as I could.
Can you hear it?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, yes.
And of course, the Democrats are too big of are in bed with those people doing that to her, and so they're not supporting her like they should. It's disgusting to see. But here's what she said. I'll get this will give you the full context of what she said, as opposed to that little clip that this was over a month ago that she said this, and so it's just making the rounds now. So here we go.
It doesn't matter how good you are. If you one day find yourself in a school where other religions are talked about, but when Islam is mentioned, we are only talking about terrorists. And if you say something, you are sent to the principal's office. So to me, I say raise hell, make people uncomfortable. Because here's the truth. Here's the truth. Far too long, we have lived with the discomfort of being a second-class citizen. And frankly, I'm tired of it. And every single Muslim in this country should be tired of it. CARE was founded after 9/11 because they recognized that some people did something and that all of us were starting to lose access to our civil liberties. So you can't just say that today someone is looking at me strange, that I am going to try to make myself look pleasant. You have to say, this person is looking at me strange. I am not comfortable with it. I am going to go talk to them and ask them why. Because that is a right you have.
Let me say, Louisa, that she said, you know, how this organization had been founded after 9/11, and that on 9/11 somebody did something, where I believe she understands perfectly well that this 9/11 was brought to us by the CIA, the neocons, and the Department of Defense, the vast majority of whom were dual U.S.-Israeli citizens, and the Mossad. So she's hinting at that, but the points she's making are impeccable. We have to talk about these issues, and it's wrong to demonize Muslims based on 9/11 because Muslims had nothing to do with it. So I think, you know, she is right up there in my pantheon with Edward Snowden and Julian Assange, frankly, in terms of getting a message out to the public. And it just astounds me how this diminutive, she can't weigh 90 pounds, you know, resident citizen who came from Somalia is having this much impact on the American public discourse. In my judgment, it's all to the good. The smears against her are unwarranted, and I'm disappointed. I have to admit, very disappointed in our president that he is not being more open-minded about diversity of opinion at the very least. That ought to be his approach. This is America. It's a great country. We're all entitled to have our point of view.
Okay, I have some issues. I'm going to talk about it, okay? She can't, it's not, I don't agree with her saying, make them uncomfortable. Let them be uncomfortable. No, it's the agenda of the media. Let the imams stand up and say, you know, let them be the voice that represents Islam and say that it's the government. Let them point to who is responsible for this social engineering. And you can't blame people because we've been misled and we've been, you know, lied to. and you know, don't shove it down my throat. You know, I don't want your religion shoved down my throat. I don't want anyone's religion shoved down my throat. Okay?
That's
No,
not
I
what
know.
she's
No, no,
saying,
no, no,
Louisa.
no, no. She
She's
says
not saying that.
no, 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 no. I didn't.
She's saying
Jim, please relax.
Muslims are being demonized wrongly, and she's 100% correct. 100% correct.
Please listen to please be respectful, Jim, because the viewers don't like it when we battle like this. I have to have my opinion, okay? You don't have to agree.
Of course you have your opinion.
Okay, but you don't have to agree with it. I'm just saying that I think it's misdirected where she's pointing the aggression. It's not my fault that your fault or the people's fault. She needs to be directing it to the people who engineered it that way. I'm saying that her comments are being misdirected. They should be directed towards the people who have engineered this bias, engineered this bias against Islam. Okay, and I'm not putting down Islam here. I'm just saying that by her saying, and this is where I stand, by her saying, let them be uncomfortable. If somebody looks at you funny, walk up to them, go in their face. No, I disagree with that. I'm not going to support that. It's not my fault that I, was misled by our government. Go to the government, call the government out for what they did, hold them accountable. Let the imams stand up and hold the governments accountable. But don't come into my face and make me uncomfortable because I don't know whether you're a terrorist or not. You know what I'm saying?
When you have the mainstream press dominated by the Zionists, and this is a historical reality, when you have a government promoting a false narrative, her making an issue of it is 100% correct. And if you want to say, yeah, you don't want her coming up to you personally to confront you, okay. She's doing the best she can. She can't be more direct and say Israel did 9/11 because she'd be called out as anti-Semitic and smeared by the Zionist-dominated press. She, in my opinion, is doing a good job. I'd say a damn good job of getting the issues on the table.
Look, I'm not saying that what she's saying is untruthful. I'm not saying that.
It's coming across that way, the way you're putting it.
I'm not finished. I didn't finish. This is not an easy issue, Jim. This is not one I'm just going to gloss over because it's too important. Because she is telling the truth and people don't like it. I understand that. And I give her credit for that. And the fact that Donald Trump is responding the way he is, like we talked about, there's great actors out there. He's waiting to deal with Israel last. After we deal with Iran, right now, Secretary Pompeo was holding a news conference this morning talking about Iran and how we're dealing with Iran. So after Iran's done, whatever's got to happen with the deep state faction, the Khazarian faction, the Fourth Reich that Benjamin Fulford talked about in his report today, when they're done dealing with that issue in Iran, they're going to go after Israel. So Donald Trump's just playing his cards by his vest. I don't necessarily think that he knows what's going on with 9/11. There's no question he knows what's going on with 9/11. So if he really knows what the truth is behind 9/11, why would he be responding to her that way if he wasn't trying to just keep the status quo for the purpose of the overall plan of defeating the Fourth Reich on the planet? Okay, so in terms of her, I don't have, the issue I have with her is, like I said, it's just a little bit misdirected. That's all. I give her credit for standing up, but I think she should call the imams to stand up and call out who's really responsible.
Well, she's setting an inspiring example, in my opinion. Yeah. And I'm
not
understand necessarily disagreeing with you on a personal level. I'm saying the good she's doing so overwhelms the negative aspects that, frankly, I wouldn't make an issue of it, but I respect your right to do so because it bothers you. Now, I encourage everyone to watch more of this. It's really fascinating. Meanwhile, I've been interviewed and explained how the mainstream media in the United States is highly influenced by spy agencies such as the CIA and the Israeli Mossad. Google's recent move in blocking Press TV's accounts was part of the American government's pressure campaign against Tehran, all totally consistent with what I've been observing. Here they also interviewed Scott Bennett, a former Army intel and PSYOPs officer, observing that Google needs to be taken to court for its tyrannical censorship of Press TV. That's absolutely outrageous, Louisa. They are doing to Press TV, which is the national Iranian news service, what they're doing to you. They
Yes.
are being just as brutal to them as they are being brutal to you, and it's all outrageous and it's all completely wrong. Let me continue with additional stories. Pompeo claims the U.S. is trying to end the Afghan war. Speaking at Texas A&M, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said U.S. negotiations with the Taliban are trying to end the longest war in U.S. history. The goal is to try to broker a peace between the Taliban and the Afghan government. Negotiations have been ongoing for months, have established a growing understanding with the Taliban, ostensibly. When we have the framework of a deal where the U.S. withdraws and the Taliban keeps ISIS and Al-Qaeda out. It sounds nice, but we ought not to have been there in the first place. Back on the track, a railway linking Iran to Syria through Iraq, and this is very significant, is back in place. It began a big deal, a $6.6 billion deal. Syria announced earlier in the month its intention to lease the port of Atakia to Iran from October in response to an official request from Tehran to Damascus in February 2018. It's going to be a very big deal financially. Pompeo has lost his mind. Chinese diplomat hits back at U.S. attacks on Beijing's investments in Chile. The Chinese ambassador in San...
Uh-oh. Someone's listening to this.
Pardon me?
Okay, our internet just froze up. Looks like somebody, someone's watching. So, are you there, Jim? Yeah, we've got some internet problems all of a sudden talking about this issue. You're frozen, Jim. Oh my God, we're going to lose the...
Oh, really?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Are you there now? Yeah, we're having some issues. It looks like someone wasn't happy about this discussion, but it's okay. Let's keep going. I think you're okay. Oh, you froze. It keeps freezing. Oh, man. Jeez. I mean, and I'm on a landline, you know? I'm not on Wi-Fi or anything. I don't know what's going on. Someone's in my computer, huh?
Actions are backfiring. European refiners are switching to Russian sour grades as U.S. sanctions have shrunk Venezuela's similar grade exports, Reuters has reported, adding that the Russian sour crude is getting increasingly expensive. Citing sources from the trade industry, Reuters says the situation has been made worse by the fact that OPEC members have cut mainly their output price rise. One final sentence there. U.S. crude is not an alternative as it's overwhelmingly light and sweet, while refineries in Europe are equipped to process heavier grades as well as light ones to make refined products. Louisa, comments?
You're not going to like what I have to say, Jim, because I'm not.
That's okay.
I actually have.
That's okay. I'll brace myself.
Brace yourself, Jim. I'm a fire sign. I'm a fire sign. Brace yourself.
Go ahead.
My ex-husband knows about all that. Okay, so okay, you're not going to like it, but isn't it interesting how they want to pit? They want a race war. They want to pit religions against each other. And what did Ilhan Omar say? If someone looks at you funny, walk up to them and make them uncomfortable. I'm sorry for all the good she may be doing about talking about the truth of some of the matters. I believe that there is some connections with her Muslim Brotherhood associations, and I do believe that she's trying to incite violence by her comments. I'm sorry. I know you disagree. I just had to get that out there.
Okay. Good.
I'm glad you're smiling, Jim.
Glad you got it off your chest, my friend.
Thank you.
Excellent. Meanwhile, Jimmy Carter, U.S. most warlike nation in history. Former U.S. President Jimmy Carter said President Trump has spoken with him about China because the current leader was worried that Beijing overtaking the U.S. economically, saying America's endless wars may lead to China superseding the U.S. I have no doubt about it. Carter, 94, said Trump called him on Saturday as he spoke during his regular Sunday school lesson at Mariantha Baptist Church in his hometown of Plains, Georgia. He told the congregation Trump fears China's growing economic strength and suggests the president was right to be concerned. Some experts say China could overtake the U.S. as the world's largest economy by 2030. The former president said China is getting ahead of the U.S. because Washington's been at war for most of its history. Carter, who normalized diplomatic relations between China and the U.S. in 1979, suggested China's rapid growth has been facilitated by government investment and helped by peace. Since 1979, you know how many times China has been at war with anybody? Carter asked. None. And we have stayed at war. He said the U.S. has only enjoyed 16 years of peace in its 242-year history, making the country the most warlike nation in the history of the world. This is, he said, because of Washington's tendency to force other nations to adopt our American principles. Carter said China, in contrast to the U.S., had made massive economic progress for maintaining peace. How many miles of high-speed railroad do we have in this country, Carter asked. The U.S. has wasted, I think, $3 trillion on military spending. It's more than you can imagine. China has not wasted a single penny on war, and that's why they're ahead of us in almost every way. And I think the difference is if you take $3 trillion and put it in American infrastructure, you probably have $2 trillion left over. We'd have high-speed rail, we'd have bridges that don't collapse, we'd have roads that are properly maintained, our education system would be as good as that of, say, South Korea or Hong Kong, when in fact it lags way behind. Carter served as the 39th president from 1977 to 1981. The former president has been particularly critical of the nation's direction under Trump's leadership. Commenting on Carter's remarks, Professor Dennis Etler said, although Jimmy Carter is considered one of the more reasonable U.S. presidents, he was still a tool of the imperialists running the show, meaning during the time he presided over the country. Louisa, I gotta say, I think Jimmy Carter is a good and decent man, and that what he's saying is very telling about recent U.S. history.
Well, I have to say that I think that he was probably one of the better presidents, but because he knew what we were facing. There was no question he knew what was going on, but I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm not going to, I mean, he's right though about China. I mean, China has become the emperor of the world. You know, while the United States was busy destabilizing other parts of the world, particularly the Middle East and countries that were not part of the central banking system, China was making friends and building bridges. And look at what the they have. I'm going to do a special report on China, folks. There's so much news every day about China's infrastructure investment in Africa and in other countries and places of the world that it's amazing that everybody is like going to owe China everything. And this is like this is talk about a coup d'etat of the world. I mean, China has, you know, this imperialistic expansion. They did it through trade. That's how they did it, and they were doing it from the Silk Road to begin with, and they're still, you know, they're very patient. They're very patient people.
This is an ancient civilization, Louisa. I mean, we've only been around 250 years. They've been like 2,500 years.
That's right. They're very patient.
They are wise. They learn from experience, and they understand that harmonious relations with other nations are beneficial to the whole world, and that they can succeed by competition on economic and other grounds, and they are masters at it.
Absolutely, Jim.
So our belligerent tendencies, which Jimmy Carter was calling out, are actually a sign of weakness and not a sign of strength.
And that's why you see that Chinese delegation here all the time. It's like, how many times do they have to come to talk about trade? Just last week they were here talking with Stephen Mnuchin again. I mean, really, these are very tight, close relationships that they're forging, and China's really trying to straighten things out here, I think, and try to make friends, let's say.
Yeah. Well, here we have about the Notre Dame fire, that France had launched a criminal probe as cops quiz restorers working on the cathedral. There have been a lot of churches vandalized. Notice that saying here by radical secularists and Muslims, that seems to have a political slant. It might be true. I don't doubt a lot of churches have been vandalized, most of them being relatively minor in their scope. But Here's the chief engineer of Notre Dame. The fire's flames needed an accelerant to reach and burn the church's ancient oak beams, which were way elevated in the air, like 300 feet above. The head engineer responsible for the Notre Dame site has this to say on French TV about the accident. With a really old oak like that, you need a lot of smaller wood to first get the fire hot enough for the ancient oak beams to burn, and there wasn't any smaller wood there. In 2010, we replaced all the electrical wiring, so there's no way this was sparked by a short circuit. We put new wiring in place according to modern standards, and we went even further. We installed state-of-the-art fire protection and detection systems in the cathedral. At all times, there were always 2 men on standby in the cathedral day and night to investigate anything at the moment an alarm went off, then if necessary, call the fire emergency services. I am really stunned that this has happened. And of course, legitimately so. And now we have a report that may have been done with a directed energy weapon. And frankly, Louisa, because the fire burned at the top of the cathedral with this heavy oak,
Right.
I think this is the most likely explanation of how it was done, that it actually was by a satellite-mounted weapon. I'm convinced personally this was a Mossad op, and that would be a way to do it. They have received trillions from us, right before 9/11. Of course, Donald Rumsfeld announced 2.3 trillion missing from the Pentagon budget, where Dov Zakheim was not only a dual U.S.-Israeli citizen, but a rabbi, was a chief financial officer. You can bet that 2.3 trillion made its way to a little country in the Middle East that claims to be our ally. They have satellites, without any doubt, with directed energy weapons installed. I believe this is what happened here to the cathedral, a monstrous crime.
Well,
Louisa.
if I may comment on that, just from Ben Fulford's report, this is what he has to say. The sacrificial burning of Notre Dame Cathedral to Moloch, Baal, Set, or Satan, was a desperate attempt by superstitious European Union Khazarian Satanists to somehow reverse their fortunes, P2 Freemason sources say. It is difficult for normal people to understand the superstitious mindset of these Satanists, but essentially they seem to think that they are in battle against a goddess. That is why they chose to burn Notre Dame, Our Lady, because this refers to Mary. Mary, of course, is the Christian name for the goddess Isis, who raised an infant until he could defeat Set or Satan. It is for this same, obviously we know who that is, it is for this same superstitious reason that these Satanists created a horrific terror organization and tried to call in ISIS in order to weaken support for the goddess in the mindset of humanity. So this was according to Benjamin Fulford's report. Let me just say, he started out the report saying, Germany and its European Union Fourth Reich regime are under siege and facing collapse due to a massive debt load and popular resistance in occupied states like France and Italy. There's talking about them selling off their Daimler-Benz Corporation and Deutsche Bank assets. So that was what Fulford had to say about this.
Well, I think there's a convergence. Robert David Steele, who's quite brilliant in these areas, has suggested that Merkel, Macron, and May were in collusion, that they even had the approval of the Pope for this event in order to unify Europe and to substantiate or shore up their banking system there. So you can see a multiplicity of motives converging here. This was no accident. This was clearly intentional, and it required a very sophisticated ignition device, as we learned from the chief engineer for the cathedral itself.
True. I mean, that oak's been standing there for a really long time. A very good point that he makes too in that.
Yeah, I think so too. So I believe we've now zooming in.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Putin's offering to send Russia's best experts to help restore the cathedral, which is all wonderful, of course, and very thoughtful. Here's a reflection by Richard Rubinstein on the arrest of Julian Assange. This is extremely interesting. Right. Will someone please explain to me why Martin Luther King Jr. is considered a hero for violating laws sustaining the system of racial discrimination, while Julian Assange is considered a villain for violating laws sustaining the system of imperial war? Democratic bigwigs are celebrating the arrest of the WikiLeaks founder in London and the request of Trump's Justice Department for his extradition to the U.S. According to Senator Chuck Schumer, Mark Warner, and Joe Manchin, and of course ex-Senator Hillary Clinton, Assange deserves to be punished severely for plotting with Chelsea Manning to obtain and release classified military information, and for allegedly helping the Russians to influence the election of 2016. These are war Democrats, of course, who never met a defense corporation or armed intervention they didn't like. One is not surprised to hear them howling for revenge against the traitor who revealed American war crimes to the world. Democrats calling themselves progressives are more inclined to defend Assange, sort of, on the ground that his imminent prosecution represents an attack on journalistic freedom that may make it difficult for the media to publish classified documents like those contained in the Pentagon Papers. More legalistic progressives aren't so sure about this, since they consider publishing classified info, as long as it has been sanitized to avoid exposing intelligence agencies. But obtaining the info by hacking into a government computer is not okay. That's a crime. What neither camp wants to talk about, however, is whether it's okay to break security laws in order to expose the American empire's war plans, errors, and misdeeds. Thus, my earlier question: why is lawbreaker Martin Luther King Jr. a hero and lawbreaker Julian Assange a villain? Intelligence people I've asked about this give the most convoluted and irrelevant answers. Dr. King never threatened American security the way Assange did. Dr. King submitted to arrest, but Assange fled to the security of an embassy. King loved his enemies, but Assange hates America. The assumption disguised by these rather scholastic distinctions is that Martin attacked an obviously evil system, American institutional racism, while Julian only attacked the American empire. So if you don't want to admit that the empire is evil or even that it exists, you talk about national security or journalistic freedom or something, anything but imperialistic war making. Dr. King himself did not make that mistake. What he finally came to understand was that racism, the oppression of the poor, and empire building are codependent, interrelated diseases that can only be cured by strenuous efforts to heal all three conditions simultaneously. He called this a revolution of values. On April 4th, 1967, at Riverside Church in New York, he delivered an address beyond Vietnam that contained these lines: "A true revolution of values will lay hands on the world order and say of war, this way of settling differences is not just. This business of burning human beings with napalm, of filling our nation's homes with orphans and widows, of injecting poisonous drugs of hate into the veins of people normally humane, of sending men home from dark and bloody battlefields physically handicapped and psychologically deranged, cannot be reconciled with wisdom, justice, and love. A nation that continues year after year to spend more money on military defense than on programs of social uplift is approaching spiritual death." Sustained applause. I think there's not the slightest question that were he alive, Dr. King would applaud the sort of civil disobedience that exposes the empire's secrets to the world and makes people aware of the crimes and errors committed in places like Guantanamo and Abu Ghraib prisons, the battlefields of Iraq, and the drone-infested provinces of Afghanistan. I feel this approach, this is a critique now from a friend who's very smart to offer an alternative perspective. What is being called, this approach is ahistorical, what is being called targeting of individuals has gone on since the dawn of time. The movie Checklist, which I highly recommend, shows the hardball tactics of the Lenin era, not even the Stalinist Great Terror. Actually, the kind of harassment we're witnessing now paradoxically reflects a lack of self-confidence. I apologize for that, Louisa. This slide is out of order. Let me just take you to the comment on what was reported about Assange versus Martin. That slide belongs further down the list. I'm sorry about that.
No problem.
I thought that was a masterful piece comparing Julian Assange and Martin Luther King.
You know, it raises a lot of questions, again, to kind of how we're socially engineered through the media to view something a certain way, to yes, they're looking at Julian Assange as like some kind of criminal. He is not a criminal. He's a publisher, just like we're publishers. We're not on the same Well, I know we're smaller than Julian Assange, but the thing is that we're trying to get the truth out, and so the truth is apparently a weapon. So that's why they're trying to call all the Trump followers cultists. They're trying to steer the narrative. They're trying to tell you what to think, to control what you think and believe. And so it was a good comparison. I thought interesting comparison, but still something very thought provoking, food for thought.
Meanwhile, after Julian Assange's arrest, a reminder of WikiLeaks' most famous leaks, the U.S. views major financial institutions such as the World Bank and IMF as unconventional weapons to be used against adversaries. This was all laid out in John Perkins' book, Confessions of an Economic Hitman. Here we have an FBI affidavit in the Assange case showing the government is criminalizing the publication of Afghan war logs. An affidavit from the United States Justice Department's prosecution of WikiLeaks editor-in-chief Julian Assange shows prosecutors are focusing on criminalizing the publication of the Iraq and Afghanistan war logs. The focus on the publication of them is baselessly linked to an alleged password cracking agreement that prosecutors believe existed between Assange and Chelsea Manning, who disclosed over 500,000 documents. Assange was expelled from the Ecuadorian embassy and arrested by British police on April 11th. The expulsion and arrest linked to an indictment and extradition request fired by the U.S. government over a year ago. Special FBI agent Megan Brown, assigned to counter-espionage squad at the Washington field office, was tasked with sifting through information to compile the basis for a case against Assange. Using language derived from the Espionage Act, which has been welded by the Justice Department to aggressively crack down on whistleblowers, Manning and Assange had reason to believe that public disclosure of the Afghanistan war reports and Iraq war reports would cause injury to the United States. Well, exposing the truth when it's of malevolent actions taken by a party, yes, is injurious to their reputation. But that doesn't mean it was unjust or inappropriate. Documents included in the Afghan war reports contained information, the disclosure which potentially endangered U.S. troops and Afghan civilians and aided enemies of the United States. Well, this is why there's a tendency to, redact. That's why the Mueller report can't be released in an unredacted form. The affidavit highlighted in a New York Times story, Taliban study WikiLeaks to hunt informants. This is just pure propaganda. After the release of the Afghan war reports, a member of the Taliban contacted the United States. Right, this was a Mossad agent and said, we are studying the report. We knew about the spies and people who collaborate with U.S. forces. We will investigate through our own Secret Service whether the people mentioned are really spies working for the U.S. If they are U.S. spies, and we'll know how to punish them. That is pure rubbish. That's a clear psyop taking place. And then she talks about the raid on Osama bin Laden's compound. We know that was totally fake. During the raid, and the part of it was to obtain just the document she's talking about here as planted. During the raid, they collected a number of items of digital media, which included, among other things, a letter from bin Laden to another member of the terrorist organization Al-Qaeda, in which bin Laden requested the member gather the DoD material posted to WikiLeaks, and two, a letter from the member of Al-Qaeda bin Laden with information from the Afghanistan war reports released by WikiLeaks. I mean, this is embarrassingly bad, Louisa. This is how corrupt has become the deep state. Osama bin Laden died on 15 December 2001. That was 10 years before the raid on the compound. He had nothing to do with 9/11. He was actually an official with the agency. His name was Colonel Tim Osmond. I mean, it's embarrassingly bad. It makes me nauseous to actually have to report these deceptive acts by the government, but the public is entitled to know the truth.
I agree. They're just going to keep, they're going to keep promoting that disinfo as long as they can to, to support their agenda.
I shall continue. Meanwhile, CBS News is admitting, even CBS News, I should say, 5G is already causing staggering health problems. A microwave bath sure to cause cancer nationwide can be nothing less than intentional. Very serious stuff, Louisa. In this new story at Forbidden Knowledge TV, Steve Quayle linked to the website. They reported that the rollout of 5G is already causing staggering health problems after firefighters in several different California counties, from San Francisco to Sacramento to Los Angeles, reported neurological damage, headaches, insomnia, memory problems, and confusion soon after 5G equipment was installed outside their fire stations. And while we wouldn't blame the reader for thinking the story might be a bizarre conspiracy theory, back on May 29th, CBS Sacramento reported major health risk questions have been raised about the rollout of 5G just months before Sacramento officially launched 5G service. Firefighters have reported memory problems and confusion after the 5G equipment was installed outside a fire station. The firefighters claim the symptoms stopped when they relocated a station without the equipment nearby. As a Forbidden Knowledge TV story is also reported, when the firefighters were tested, they were found to have brain abnormalities and measurable neurological deficits. And as this January story at CBS San Francisco reported, California firefighters have now been exempted from the installation of 5G equipment near their fire stations. Yet the CBS San Francisco story also points out 5G equipment is being installed around homes, churches, schools, hospitals, stores, office parks all across the country. Are firefighters somehow specifically vulnerable to the negative health effects of 5G in a way that for some strange reason the rest of us are not? Obviously not. Of course, that last statement was facetious, and knowing that firefighters in California will be exempt from having 5G equipment installed at the firehouses due to the proven negative effects should be looked upon as a red alert warning call to us all. They are the canaries in the coal mine. If the firefighters don't want this equipment near their station, why would we want it near our homes? While supporters and pushers of 5G claim it's safe, the International Association of Firefighters disagrees. The International Association of Firefighters began opposing cell towers on fire stations after firefighters complained of health problems. These firefighters developed symptoms, said Dr. Gunnar Hauser, who conducted a pilot study on firefighters at the station with cell towers. The symptoms include problems with memory, problems with intermittent confusion, problems with weakness. Hauser said their brain scans even suggest low-level RF, that radio frequency, can cause cell damage, and he worries about more vulnerable groups like kids. We found abnormal brain function in all the firefighters we examined. 5G is the stupidest idea in the history of the world. Washington State biochemistry medical science professor explains the facts. Martin L. Paul, PhD and Professor Emeritus Biochemistry and Basic Medical Sciences at Washington State, outlines in a new report the many health risks associated with 5G technology and wireless radiation. Reflect on 5G is gaining attention and might make us a little fearful of the effects. We must have, this fear brings things back to awareness of the issue so we can make better choices, but not be fearful. Check out our CE protocol for this. We're in the midst of a 5G wireless technology rollout, and politicians have yet to address safety concerns. I recently used Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau as an example, but it's happening worldwide. It's one of many examples that illustrate how large corporations completely control politics. I also recently wrote about Robert F. Kennedy Jr., explained how this came to be and how they've been able to completely compromise government, big media, and our federal regulatory agencies that are supposed to be protecting and informing us. In the video, he uses Big Pharma as an example. They provide the most money to Congress, even more than big oil and gas. In that article, I also outlined multiple examples of fraud so readers can get a clear picture of what's going on, see some actual evidence. It's clear we're not being protected. Politicians are simply abiding to the will of their masters, the big corporations, who in turn act as slaves to their financial overlords, the big banks. We continue to see products and services being approved and implemented without ever going through any safety testing. This is a big problem and one of the main reasons why we could be seeing a drastic rise in multiple diseases and ailments, especially when it comes to neuropsychiatric disorders. A study entitled Microwave Frequency Electromagnetic Fields Produce Widespread Neuropsychiatric Effects, including depression, published in the Journal of Chemical Neuroanatomy, which outlines the problem quite clearly, and it's only one of thousands of peer-reviewed studies raising multiple concerns in regard to this type of technology. Louisa, this is serious shit.
Oh, Jim, there's also some schools. I saw some reports recently about some schools that are some parents who are trying to get these towers removed from the schools. I mean, my goodness, there's one on my own kid's school. These big towers where the kids are and teachers are getting cancer. You know, it's like, you know, clusters.
Yeah.
know,
Well, the etiology is obvious. I mean, this is what demographers do. They trace the correlation of causes in relation to effects. This is obvious. This is a plan to take out a large segment of the U.S. population. I have no doubt, Louisa, and it's got to be intentional. It's got to be intentional.
Right. I mean, there's, you know, exactly. I mean, as he said, that the regulatory agencies are being usurped. So there needs to be studies done on the effectiveness and safety, rather than not effectiveness, but the safety of these technologies. But, you know, folks, nothing to see here. You just keep on living your life.
Right. Nothing to see here. Just move on.
Just move on. Don't take any responsibility. Just move on.
Here we have a Pulitzer Prize honoring coverage of Parkland, Pittsburgh, and Annapolis, where Parkland and Pittsburgh, I haven't looked at Annapolis, but these are fake shootings. This is embarrassing. Here you had Kelsey Friend, Amron Mariota interviewing, but Kelsey Friend said it was like a movie. It looked so real, but it felt so fake. We have images from a 52-second video inside a classroom where you can see a training dummy with no arms and no head lying on a pool of fake blood. Here it is, Louisa. This is proof this is fake. Doing their best to cry, worried about their bottled water. One's on her iPod. The kid pulling his putts.
Kid pulling his butts.
Persons in police uniforms.
Who he said. Sorry.
The camera will swing around for dramatic effect. Kids holding him arm with no injury, all fake. You might think that those were real cops and Parkland police were Johnny on the spot, but Parkland gave up its police force in 2004 to save money. Those were actors in police uniforms. They blew it too, Louisa. Look at here. This was on Valentine's Day. But the only death on February 14th was an Alice Levinson, who was like 84 years old, had nothing to do with it. They forgot to put up obituaries for the alleged victims of Parkland. It's that bad. Meanwhile, we have this guy, Eric Swalwell, going off the deep end with absurd allegation that Trump is an agent of the Kremlin. Even the Mueller report torpedoing the Democratic hopes of finding cause to impeach the president. He's still part of a gun control. Here's on with Jay Trapper doing a good job of cornering him into suggesting in jail gun owners if he became president of the United States, because these fake drills are being used to promote gun control. Tapper, so gun control is a central plank in your campaign. You wrote, quote, "We should ban possession of military-style semi-automatic assault weapons. We should buy back such weapons from all who choose to abide by the law. We should criminally prosecute anyone who chooses to defy it by keeping their weapons." Criminal prosecution for keeping assault weapons? What's the punishment for people who don't hand in their guns? They go to jail? Swalwell. Well, Jake, they would, but I would also offer alternative, which would be to keep them at a hunting club or a shooting range. And the reason I propose this is because these weapons are so devastating. I have seen this as a prosecutor in the cases I prosecuted. We have seen this at the school shootings from Sandy Hook to Parkland. I was just at Parkland earlier this week doing a town hall there. But it's not just the violence they have caused, it's the fear, the immeasurable fear that our children live in because they're still on our streets. I want to get rid of that fear. I want to do what Australia did and New Zealand just recently did. This issue needs some bold leadership. It's all fake. It's all completely fake. And here you have the new governor announcing he's going to hold a cabinet meeting in Israel. John Monsanto thinks is just fine with taxpayers and lobbyists putting the bill for the state to have a cabinet meeting in a foreign country. How bizarre is this? He announced yesterday he's going to hold the next meeting of the Florida state captain in Jerusalem at the U.S. Embassy. He fought to move there when he was in Congress. Yes, you read it right. The business of Florida state will be conducted in a foreign country whose interests may not be entirely aligned with Florida's. The Tampa Bay Times reports a trip for Florida officials is hosted by a group called Enterprise Florida, a public-private partnership of business leaders and government officials. DeSantis serves as a chairman of the board of directors. This is, of course, a pander to Jewish voters in Florida. It's also a pander to Bibi Netanyahu and his hard-right government. And it's about dominionists who support Israel in order to witness its demise so the rapture can begin. But mostly it's ridiculous. There's absolutely no reason on earth for Florida business to be conducted in any foreign country. Taxpayers, regardless of their religion or ethnicity, should be outraged. Louisa, this is just absurd.
Yeah, we have to see, people just have to wake up and not, look, they're going to try to control the narrative as much as they possibly, as much as people will believe them. It's just going to be, you know, people have to wake up and see that there's an agenda trying to be pushed on them. And, you know, they just have to wake up to it. And now what's good, when Robert David Steele did come out and talk about, as well as yourself, as well as he did, look, the whole issue that Alex Jones brought to the forefront, and then he's trying to backtrack now. Is there any latest development on that? Because he was backtracking on that, trying to make
they're scouring over his deposition, which was absurd mishmash. I mean, Alex Jones has lost the respect of virtually everyone who ever thought he had anything valuable to contribute.
Right. They're backtracking on that. Well, this is how desperate they are, folks. So look, I mean, the truth is going to resonate. The truth has a frequency and it resonates with you. You just know if somebody's telling you the truth or not. So don't let them, you know, just know that the mainstream media for the most part is propaganda, and whatever the politicians are doing, they're all sold out and bought out. So in that regard, we did lose our republic, but we are trying to get it back. And of course, President Trump's trying to do that. And don't think that you understand what he's doing. He's playing Sun Tzu. He's playing Art of War, 5D chess, and he's doing the best he can, with the Patriots behind him.
I dearly hope you're right. And Louisa, meanwhile, we have a poll showing that bullying, not schools, are blamed for these shootings. This is rather interesting. By and large, schools are less likely to be blamed, 59%. But not much blame on schools. While roughly 4 in 10 say schools have some responsibility, only 9% attribute a great deal. Actually, it ought to go to the Obama administration, which had initiated this whole series of staged and fake shootings. In the years since 2 Colorado teenagers gunned down 12 classmates and a teacher in the Denver suburb of Littleton, schools across the country have fixated on playing for threats that had before been unimaginable. Teachers and students practice fleeing and hiding during realistic shooter scenarios. Well, they ought to get guns. You ought to have armed the teachers. Let them pack. They'll take out any threats that are real. Most of these are not. They're fabricated. Shootings haven't stopped. A little over a year after an armed ex-student allegedly killed, I like that word, allegedly killed 17 people at Florida's Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High. The survey finds a large majority, 67%, say schools have become less safe. Only 13% say they become more safe. The rest say about the same. Along the same lines, despite all the planning, drills, and expense, only about a third of parents are extremely or very confident their children are safe in school, or that the school could respond to an active shooter. About 4 in 10 are moderately confident, while 2 in 10 have little or no confidence. All parents of school age are especially likely to blame them on the schools themselves compared to other adults. Only half of Americans strongly blame the shootings on the availability of guns. And a majority want to see the nation's gun laws made stricter, but it's really the opposite way around. You need more guns. Their inverse relationship is just embarrassingly bad, the ignorance on this crucial issue. Washington has had little appetite for federal gun reform despite surges in activism following Columbine and the 2012 shooting deaths of 20 children and 6 adults at Sandy Hook. Last year's Parkland brought a shift in the political landscape with the shooting young survivors leading a national movement aimed at gun reform, all staged, all fabricated, all pre-planned. before the Democrat-controlled House in February approved a measure requiring federal background checks for all firearm sales. It's been nearly 25 years since Congress had considered major gun control legislation. The bill faces dim prospects in the Republican-controlled Senate, and President Trump has threatened to veto it, saying it would impose unreasonable requirements on gun owners. I'm with him there. And here you see how they fabricated the kids at Sandy Hook using photographs of older kids when they were younger. Here you see Noah Posner, the most famous of the alleged decedents from Sandy Hook, turning into Michael Wagner, because Noah Posner was a fiction made up of photographs of Michael Wagner. Embarrassingly bad, Louisa. Meanwhile, a wonderful piece on my blog, Sandy Hook, why are there 4 versions of Noah Posner's death certificate? Lenny Posner, father of Noah, victim of the December 14, 2012 Sandy Hook Elementary mass, is suing Professor James Fetzer. See the Sandy Hook Posner versus Fetzer lawsuit for dummies for the basic elements of the case. Central to the lawsuit is Noah Posner's death certificate. The lawsuit claims that Fetzer has defamed Lenny by asserting in books and blogs that Noah's death certificate, which Fetzer had received from an individual named Kelly Watt, who claims her source to be Lenny himself, is fraudulent. In the lawsuit, Lenny provides an image of what he claims to be Noah's real official death certificate, attachment A on page 15, in Posner versus Fetzer civil complaint and demand for jury trial, filed on November 27, 2018 at the Circus Court of Dane County. We will number the Fetzer Watt documented death certificate 1, which is Exhibit A, and goes through 4 of them and finds all 4 of them are fabrications, Louisa. All 4 are fabrications.
Yeah. It should be Sandy Hook for dummies. But, it's good enough. Sandy Hook, Fetzer versus, Posner lawsuit for dummies. But Sandy Hook for dummies, I mean, it's just amazing. Jim, you do a great job outlining all of this. And, I appreciate the, is there any other forward movement on the case? Is there any updates you want to give us?
Oh, well, I filed a very important request for expanding DNA testing. The plaintiff asked that they test a DNA sample that allegedly was taken at the time of the shooting of the decedents. It turns out that Connecticut had just passed a law to keep these DNA samples, I think, for precisely this occasion. I explained why it was unlikely because, no doubt there'd be a match because it would be obtained from Michael Wagner. So Michael Wagner appears to be the biological son of Lenny Posner, whose real name appears to be Reuben Wagner. So I've now submitted a motion for an expansion of the DNA testing to include not only the purported remains of Noah Posner, but also of Lenny Posner, but also of Michael Wagner, but also of Reuben Wagner, but also of the purported mother, Veronique Della Rosa. That should show up in the court files today.
Whoa. Well, let's hope that there's some, honest testing done of that DNA.
Yep, let's hope. There's an independent company that works for the court system here. Why stop at burning books when libraries themselves are sites of whiteness, a librarian from MIT, believe it or not, has suggested. White dudes writing about white ideas, white things are ideas, people and things they stole from people of color, and then claimed as white property are hogging all the space in American libraries. And it's perpetuating centuries of racial inequality. This is so absurd, I can hardly believe. Massachusetts Institute of Technology librarian Sophia Leon, who's manifestly uneducated and ignorant, has no business serving as a librarian, has claimed in a post that tiptoes around the question of what is to be done with his so-called knowledge. Library collections continue to promote and proliferate whiteness with their very existence and the fact they are physically taking up space in our libraries. This is stunning. She also brings in Marie Kondo, a celebrity personal organizer, who preaches that mental clarity comes from throwing away one's possessions. While libraries ever since Alexandria have focused to the point of obsession on accumulating as much knowledge as possible within their walls, Lung seems to think librarians have been doing it wrong all these centuries, suggesting it's time to start getting all that white clutter under control, lest they become complicit in centuries of white male oppression. Meanwhile, we have a medical marijuana law being rolled out in New York where unvaccinated citizens are being banned from public places, including schools, churches, malls, sidewalks. Louisa, think about this. Mike Adams, Natural News. Medical martial law has been rolled out in Rockland County, New York, where unvaccinated citizens are now banned from all public spaces, including schools, sidewalks, malls, churches, and public transportation, under the absurd quack science fraud that claims measles is only spread by unvaccinated people. In truth, the measles vaccine spreads the measles through viral shedding and improperly weakened viral strains. If the measles vaccines really work, why would vaccinated people have anything to fear from the unvaccinated anyway? Why would you ban unvaccinated people from coming into public forums and only allowed vaccinated as though it were a threat to the vaccinated if the vaccines work? This is simply absurd. This declaration of medical martial law would ban unvaccinated people from public transit and voting locations. With Democrats now pushing to lower the voting age to 16, this medical police state declaration would bar unvaccinated youth from being able to vote unless they're vaccinated. They're also being denied access to public education, public transit, and entering all government. This is completely absurd, Louisa, completely absurd.
Jim, you know, the Common Core curriculum that they're pushing in the schools was meant to just dumb people down so that they would just accept and obey anything, any fascist, draconian, you know, rules that they want. What are they going to do? What do you mean banned from public places? How are they going to know? Is everyone going to walk around like they did in Nazi Germany with a star on their clothes to indicate who the Jews were? Right? Is this what we're going to do? We're all going to have this mark of the beast. We're going to have some way to identify who can walk through the public places and who can't?
Yeah, it's stunning. I know. It's absolutely
It's the Fourth Reich. It's the Fourth Reich. Go ahead.
It is. And the idea of burning libraries, which he's proposing, what an insanity. What are they trying to hide? Out of the violent videos on the net possessing the New Zealand boss shooting video can get you 10 years in prison. This is Eric Swalwell. And just to show how fake it is, see?
Wait, Jim. Hold on. We've been banned. All right. It's okay. I'm going to put it only on BitChute because I think this is what got us deleted off YouTube.
Look, this is just showing a weapon with brass cartridges that disappear in midair. This is absurdity. This is showing it's fake.
They don't want people to see the Houdini bullets.
Of course, this is proof that nobody died there. This is why Eric Swalwell is obviously an instrument of the deep state. Embarrassingly bad. And meanwhile, I'm being attacked by having a false claims about the Christchurch shooting from a guy named Max Egan, who claims to have presented 4 proofs, whereas Mona Alexis Presley has gone through and shown all 4 of his proofs are fabricated and fake. That's right on my blog. Okay. Mona Alexis Presley, does Max Egan have it right? Was a Christchurch shooting real? She actually demonstrates that I'm correct and Max Egan is the fraud I called him out to be. Meanwhile, we have a presidential candidate, Andrew Yang, proposing during a CNN town hall to create a new federal agency to punish those seeking to misinform the public. In other words, you and I are going to be made illegal when we bring the truth about these events. Andrew Yang has revealed himself to be pretty authoritarian in his town hall with CNN. He actually proposes a new law enforcement agency to punish people or groups who seek to misinform the American people. He cites the dangers of the soon-to-be-released and apparently widespread deep fake technology as being a bigger threat to society than free speech or freedom of the press. That's the entire point. The only way you can hold the media accountable is by violating the Constitution and freedom of the press. He also says CNN, of course, isn't doing anything wrong, isn't misinforming the American people intentionally, which is bullshit, giving you a pretty clear indicator. It won't be the corporate mainstream media like CNN he wants to punish. It'll be those who question or challenge the official stories and narratives. Meanwhile, Dr. Catherine Horton has appealed to investigators of DEW's military neurobiology and systemic corruption. She's asking for affidavits from those who have been assaulted. That's where the commentary that I began to read before fits. Brandon Smith, meanwhile, has published Our Conspiracy Theories Tearing Society Apart or Saving Us from Destruction. This is a brilliant piece on my blog, Louisa. and it embeds a 4-part How to Spot a False Flag series where Dr. Catherine Horton is interviewing me. It's absolutely sensational. I recommend it without qualification.
Yeah. Oh, I was watching some of her other. It's interesting that she's, really developing a channel now and having a presence, more than in the past. But she was very supportive over this. Look, even targeted individuals and what they go through and things of that nature. So she's a very educated, very smart woman. And there is a campaign out there. I did come across a video by someone who is out there trying to make her look like she's a mentally deranged individual, of course, because she's telling the truth. So look, we're just on another timeline. I feel like we're just existing on another timeline. It just seems like
Louisa, this woman is among the most courageous, intelligent, competent I've ever encountered in my entire life. I admire her without qualification.
Right.
She's speaking the truth. I've interviewed her 6 or 8 times now. She's a sensational human being whose own life is at risk. She's so subjected to this radiation attack that she's having to live under a metal barrier. She's having to protect herself with a reflective metal barrier. It's that bad.
I could use some pointers from her.
You could.
I use that. It happens every day to me.
I'll put you in contact.
No, I have her contact. It's okay.
Yeah.
I know her. I mean, I do know who she is because we've come across paths. So no, it's okay. She should come on GoldFish Report. I haven't had her on, but I've had someone that she, knows quite well on GoldFish Report a few times. So, so it's amazing stuff, folks. I mean, we really, we all have to take some personal responsibility here because we're losing what we hold near and dear to us, which is our freedom. If we don't we have to all come together and do this.
Yep.
All of us,
every slide for me,
one of us. All right, Jim, thank you. No, I mean, look, the whole 5G health issue risk, this, this whole, putting kids in a state of fear, this, just for, obedience, to make them obedient to government. This was all part of that plan. And a lot of those, even though Hillary Clinton didn't get reelected, a lot of these, draconian and fascist plans are still set in motion. So they're still trying to regain control so they can implement that. But I don't see how it's going to happen. So I can tell you, folks, the next 6 years are going to be the most important 6 years of your life because we're going to see such major changes coming. And if we don't, we're done. So, Jim, thank you. It's been a very interesting report today for a Monday. It's always interesting on a Monday, Jim. Thank you so much for your great reporting. I appreciate it.
My great pleasure.
All right, folks, we're going to be back next week with another POTUS report. Look for our updates during the week for the POTUS news briefs, and also look out for our new interviews that we have coming up as well. But if we're not on YouTube, do us a favor and upload the video and put it on your channel. If you don't see us there, because who knows how long this ban is going to be. We're totally banned from uploading videos on YouTube now. And so we're going to be on BitChute. We're going to be posting this across our media platforms from our BitChute page. Folks, just get this out because, we all have to play a part here. All of us have to. Do your part and share. Go to Jim Fetzer's blog. Go to Moonrock Books. Donate for his legal fund if you can. Help support GoldFish Report. Go to our website at thegoldfishreport.com. Now, you know that you can only find these links for well, never mind. It was only for YouTube that the links were available on the website. But since YouTube's banned us from uploading, we're going to have this published on our blog, okay, and from the BitChute page. So, folks, hang in there. Who knows what's going to happen this week? Should be interesting. But I'm really ready to, start seeing some of these characters be held accountable. I'm sure you do too, Jim. So, as well. So, everyone, you have a great week. And by the way, this is Earth Day. Let's all go outside and do something nice for the Earth. Happy Earth Day to everybody.
Happy Earth Day, Louisa.
Happy Earth Day, Jim. Thanks. Go outside and plant a tree or something. So this concludes this edition of the GoldFish Report.